Although Ashen Iron hasn't given us much in terms of content, we have received a few new weapons and new perks to mess around with. One of these weapons is a new addition to our Trials of Osiris loot pool, and that is the 720 round per minute rapid fire kinetic auto rifle Everburning Glitz. Now this weapon does have some competition. We recently reviewed Giver's Blessing, which is actually very solid and easy to farm. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down this new auto and its new perks and find out if it's enough to surpass the current champ. Now before we continue further, my name is Luke. I'm the production manager on the team, and I'm filling in for Cross because he's got some throat issues and has wanted to save his voice for the raid race on Saturday. So with that out of the way, how do you get it? Everburning Glitz is a drop from Trials of Osiris. And I know many of you PvE players said, nah, I'm out. I get it, man. Some of y'all avoid that game mode like the plague. But let's go ahead and take a look at the perks, because we actually have two new ones on this weapon. In our third column, we have Attrition Orbs, Lone Wolf, Subsistence, Dynamic Sway Reduction, Transcendent Moment, Bewildering Burst, and To the Pain. And in our fourth column, we have Elemental Honing, Kinetic Tremors, Tap the Trigger, Ancillary Ordinance, One for All, Zen Moment, and Eye of the Storm. Starting off with our new perks, Bewildering Burst is located in the third column, and it's a new kinetic weapon perk that dropped in Ashen Iron, and is currently found only on this weapon and the new Pinnacle Ops Scout Rifle Forced Memorializer. Now this perk is also slated to drop on a kinetic SMG called Gunburn during Festival of the Lost, but for now, it's just these two weapons. Bewildering Burst states that reloading this weapon after defeating a target causes the next hit to launch a kinetic projectile that detonates into a longer lasting disorienting blast. So it's pretty simple. You get a kill, reload, you'll see the Bewildering Burst buff appear above your super bar. It has a duration of about 7 seconds with the enhanced version. And if you deal damage before this timer runs out, a projectile will be launched into the air, exploding for a small amount of damage and disorienting enemies in a 7-meter radius. Now using this perk in PvE, I actually think it's quite good. Yes, it does require a reload, but I was treating it as a passive buff alongside my Stasis subclass, where I could disorient, slow, and freeze enemies, which would essentially lock down the entire battlefield even more. Now this does mean you are losing out on a Stasis weapon, which we'll get more into later, but I do see the vision, and as a third column perk, I really like the functionality here. Now moving on to our other new perk, in our fourth column, we have Ancillary Ordinance. And this one is a little bit more wordy. Rapid elemental final blows and final blows on targets affected by elemental debuffs periodically prepare a homing micro missile, which is launched from your target after this weapon's next final blow. Multiple missiles can be prepared. Alright, let's break this down. So you get micro missiles from either 3 elemental kills, and that can be with any ability, a grenade for example, or 1 kill on an elementally debuffed target. So for example, you could suspend an enemy and then get the kill in order to get that rocket. And what you need to know is there are certain abilities that will also activate debuffs in the process of getting the kill. For instance, my solar melee is going to apply Scorch as it gets the kill, meaning I'm going to get a rocket from a single ability kill rather than needing 3. And before you ask, no, the disorienting debuff from Bewildering Burst does not count as an elemental debuff. We tried, guys. I would really like that synergy to exist here, but the reality is it just doesn't. Now with the enhanced perk, you can hold a maximum of 5 rockets at any given point. These rockets can also be stored and persist through weapon stow. So I can swap to my sidearm, get some kills on jolted targets, and then immediately swap back to my auto rifle and have micro missiles waiting for me. Now when you get a final blow with one of these rockets stored, a micro missile will spawn at the target's location. It'll do a little loop-de-loop and then track to seemingly the nearest target's location. In our playtime, when you have a lot of ads around you, it's really hard to anticipate where the rocket is actually gonna go. Now unfortunately, these rockets don't all get released at once. I was really hoping we'd have something like hazardous propulsion, where just all of them would go out at once and damage a target, which would be pretty nice. Damage-wise, we were dealing 599 damage per micro missile on ads here in the shooting range. This was tested at 200 weapon stat. And yes, weapon stat does increase the damage of the micro missiles. And if you'd like to increase the damage even more, look no further than Energy Acceleration, a new artifact mod added in Ashen Iron that states sustained damage with micro missiles causes the combatant to emit a kinetic shockwave that damages nearby combatants. This is essentially a mini version of Kinetic Tremors, but with a few differences. It appears to do the same amount of damage to targets no matter where in the radius they get hit, whereas Kinetic Tremors Tremors deals less damage the further you are from the center. It doesn't scale with the weapon stat, but it is reliant on the amount of damage your micro missile deals to a target. And we found that number to be approximately 455. So it is possible to proc energy acceleration with a single micro missile. However, as soon as you start getting into higher deltas or are facing higher tier combatants, it's going to take multiple missiles to proc energy acceleration, which given the chaotic nature of this perk is really not worth your time. And it's really interesting because this gun also has Kinetic Tremors in that fourth column. And yes, while I see the benefits of Ancillary Ordinance, especially when dealing with lots of adds, Kinetic Tremors is just super easy to proc. It doesn't require abilities, final blows, debuffs, none of it. It's just deal damage and get more damage. And the best part about that is it's still effective even at higher deltas. Whereas Ordinance really starts to pull you in a lot of directions, because on one hand, you want to deal more damage in order to get your rockets proccing energy acceleration, but on the other hand, you're reliant on your abilities in order to proc these debuffs, which require you to invest your stats into things like grenade, melee, class, etc. And if I'm building into my abilities anyway, why am I using a kinetic weapon when I could actually be using an elemental weapon to build into that synergy even further? So yes, this perk is fun to use, especially if you can debuff a ton of enemies with strand or solar. You can chain missiles back to back to back as long as you're killing debuff targets, but in my opinion, the elemental debuff requirements would be a lot more interesting on an actual elemental weapon where you can build into that synergy. Now that we've broken down all the new perks, let's talk about some of the other notable options here on this weapon. In our third column, we have two PvE choices that stand out. First is Subsistence. Nothing new here, really solid perk for free ammo in our mag after getting kills, which in the case of Everburning Glitz right here, has a 52 round mag size and we get 10 ammo returned on each kill. And our other option is Attrition Orbs, which is solid for generating super energy, reprocking armor charges for mods, and granting us extra health with mods on like recuperation and better already. For Everburning Glitz, it takes 30 shots to generate an orb, or only 24 shots if we use it in combination with Kinetic Tremors in our fourth column. And speaking of our fourth column, we have Elemental Honing, which on a kinetic weapon gets us 40% increased damage at 5 stacks, which on the flip side is a little bit more difficult since Glitz is kinetic and won't contribute to those stacks of Elemental Honing. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Kinetic Tremors is also on this weapon, and as you would expect, just like Giver's Blessing, it's also very good. Now, the reason why it was phenomenal on Giver's Blessing is because of rewind rounds, which Everburning Glitz doesn't have, but we do have Subsistence, which means as long as we're getting kills, we're gonna be putting ammo back into our mag. And the best part is, kills with Kinetic Tremors also proc Subsistence, so there's some great synergy here. Just like Giver's Blessing, it takes 11 shots to proc Kinetic Tremors, which triggers 3 shockwaves at 175 damage for each blast, totaling 525 damage. And finally, we have One for All. Hitting 3 separate targets increases damage for a moderate duration. This grants us a 35% damage buff for 11 seconds with the enhanced version. And believe it or not, this actually has great synergy with Bewildering Burst. Because the disorienting explosion deals damage, it also contributes to proccing One for All. Now, looking at our origin traits, we have 2 on this weapon that are definitely more PvP focused. First up is Fleet-Footed, which states that dealing damage grants you a short window of increased movement speed and airborne effectiveness. Landing a final blow increases these effects. When dealing damage, this grants us plus 15 AE and increased movement speed for about 6 seconds with the enhanced version. And if we get a kill, this increases our AE to plus 30 and it makes us even faster. And our second origin trait is Roar of Battle. This trait states that being in combat for a short duration increases handling and stability. When we deal or receive damage every 0.5 seconds for 2 seconds, this will activate, granting us plus 10 stat increases to both handling and stability. And this will persist for about 7 seconds of downtime. Not too crazy about either of these, it really just comes down to personal preference. Now that we've gone over all of the perks, it's time we look at Artifact Synergy. First up, we have Overload Rapid Fire in the first column for stunning Overload champions. In our second column, we have a new mod that dropped with Ashen Iron called Light Forged Lead. This states that kinetic weapons gain increased ammo generation, and collecting an Orb of Power increases this benefit for a short duration. So very similar to our new perk Impromptu Ammunition, but it only works on kinetic weapons, providing us faster ammo meter gains from kills, and an even bigger bonus when we pick up an Orb of Power. As you can see here, this actually actually pops up on the left-hand side of our screen with a 7-second timer, so you know when it's active after picking up an Orb of Power. Another new mod we received in Ashen Iron is Fresh Bullet Smell. This mod states that picking up an ammo brick gives your kinetic weapons increased damage for a short duration. Now it's pretty self-explanatory, but by picking up a special brick, we get 2x kinetic weapon surge for 9 seconds, and if we pick up a heavy brick, we get a 3 times kinetic weapon surge for 9 seconds. And we already mentioned it earlier, but if you're running Ancillary Ordinance, then you definitely want to pair it with Energy Acceleration. But one interaction we didn't mention earlier is you can actually stun unstoppable champions with Energy Acceleration, which is kind of interesting considering Kinetic Tremors doesn't do that. But since you can't proc Ordinance with damage, you're just going to have to get lucky killing another ad. Unless you're on Titan and running Hazardous Propulsion, which just like our weapon stat also buffs the damage of our Ancillary Ordinance micro missiles. And both of these with Energy Acceleration can be used to stun unstoppable champions. And if you're running Ancillary Ordinance, some good armor sets to pair with it are the Aeon Renewal and the Aeon Adapter sets. And no matter what you're running, the Prodigious Allegiance, Last Discipline, and Tech Set sets offer an assortment of bonuses you can take advantage of. Now looking at our temporal mods. Yes, Temporal Blast did get a nerf, and it's even worse for weapons like Glitz and Giver's Blessing. Kinetic Tremors used to help build stacks of Temporal Blast. Now post-nerf, it doesn't contribute at all. And the same is true for Ancillary Ordinance and Bewildering Blast. We also checked to see if they could trigger the explosion. No dice here either, guys. Honestly, not a huge fan of this Temporal Blast nerf, guys. Yes, we get it, the crossbow was out of band, but when the cost of that is neutering the mod across the entire game and getting rid of a lot of really cool interactions. You can still choose perks like Elemental Honing in order to scale up your damage to get Temporal Blast faster, but honestly, Temporal Armaments is just a way better pick whenever you're up against Vex and Cabal combatants, which isn't all the time, but it's pretty frequent. And Temporal Armaments is going to scale up all of your perks as well. Kinetic Tremors, Ancillary Ordinance, and Bewildering Burst all benefit from Temporal Armaments. Now looking at our PvE God Rolls, you got a lot of options here, fellas. Me personally, I think that Kinetic Tremors is my go-to pick for the 4th column. And you can pair that up with Subsistence if you never want to reload, Attrition Orbs if you're really looking to feed your build, and even Bewildering Burst if you want to take advantage of disorienting enemies. Although, if you go Burst and you really like that playstyle, then I'd highly consider One for All, since you're already doing that AoE damage. If you want to build into the highest damage output, then you probably want to go Subsistence and Elemental Honing. This does give you that 40% damage as long as you build into it. And if you really want to go with both of the new perks, you can. I just don't recommend it as my first pick. I just get so frustrated when I'm playing at higher deltas and I'm sitting there with Ancillary Ordnance stacks and I can't use them because I'm gunning down a high health target and I'm either sitting there using my primary weapon, which isn't effective, or I have to swap off to another weapon, which will get the kill faster, but it doesn't take advantage of my rockets. For mag and barrel perks, I'm going with Arrowhead Break and Appended Mag. We could go with Extended Mag, but I'm going to have to reload at some point, and I'm a big stickler on high reload speed. Now let's talk PvP. First thing I want to point out is that this weapon has really clean sights. The standard red dot, not much block in the view, which in my opinion are the best sights in game for PvP. Now comparing this directly with Giver's Blessing, stat for stat, Everburning Glitz has less range, stability, aim assist, slightly lower recoil direction, but it does have more handling, reload speed, airborne effectiveness, and mag size. Rocking a 61 range stat roll on Everburning Glitz, we have a damage fall off of 31 meters, which is not really that great in a meta where you want to be around 35 meters or more. But it is a rapid fire auto, so it is meant for close quarters combat. Damage wise, at 200 weapon stat, we're doing 25 crit and 15 to the body. And looking at our base TTK, if we're at 100 weapon stat, we can secure the kill in 10 crits. But if we go up to 200 weapon stat, we can secure that kill in 9 crits and 1 body. So a little bit of extra forgiveness, but not an increase in TTK. And if we throw Kinetic Tremors into the mix, this doesn't increase our TTK, but similar to Giver's Blessing, it dramatically increases our forgiveness. Kinetic Tremors procs in just 11 shots and can secure the kill with as little as 3 crits and 8 bodies at 100 weapon stat and 1 crit and 10 bodies at the 200 weapon stat, making it great for 1v1 engagements even at long distances. As you can see here, Kinetic Tremors does 21 damage per shockwave at 100 weapon stat, totaling 63 damage from just the tremors alone. And at 200 weapon stat, each shockwave does 22 damage, capping out at 66 total damage. Now looking at elemental honing, I'm going to be honest here guys, our testing was extremely buggy. Sometimes we'd get the kill in 5 crits, then 6, then 7, and this behavior showed up in multiple rounds of testing. So maybe it was just bugged for us, or maybe elemental honing is bugged across the board. We're not sure yet. We're going to have to do some more testing, but just keep that in mind. Which leads me to the PvP God Roll. In 6v6 scenarios like Control or Clash, for my barrel perk, I'm choosing Corkscrew, Small Bore, or Hammer Forge, which will be great for increasing the range of the weapon, because it needs as much as it can get. And for mag perks, I'm either going High Caliber or Ricochet rounds. Now looking at our third column perks, I would take Lone Wolf for that improved aim assist, ADS speed, and AE. Or you could go Dynamic Sway Reduction, which is a very good perk as it procs every other shot, making the weapon feel super consistent in the back end of the gunfight. And for the fourth column perk, I'm choosing Kinetic Tremors. The amount of times that Kinetic Tremors has secured me kills even after an enemy's hidden behind a wall has actually surprised me. But let's say you're looking for something more consistent for those 1v1 engagements. Tap the Trigger and Eye of the Storm are great picks here. And if you're not looking for the best roll, but just want to cause some funny shenanigans, then you can always go Bewildering Burst and Kinetic Tremors. Not a serious recommendation, but it is an option. But to answer the burning question on everybody's mind, which is better, Giver's Blessing or Everburning Glitz? Both of these weapons are neck and neck, but when it comes to PvE, I think Giver's Blessing is your best option. That rewind rounds plus Kinetic Tremor combo is really hard to beat. But if we're talking PvP, Everburning Glitz just slightly beats out Giver's Blessing for me, simply because it feels a little better and the PvP focused origin traits are actually worth using. But at the end of the day, it may just come down to personal preference and what you enjoy farming more, whether that be PvP or PvE. So let us know what you think down in the comments below. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.